Alrighty. I call to order the regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, Monday, March 9th, 2026 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mount Pleasant City Commission recognizes the Anishinaabe, whose ancestral lands the city stands upon today. We acknowledge the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and recognize that the three bands of Ojibwe, Saginaw, Black River, and Swan Creek, have resided on this land for over 200 years. Our acknowledgement of the full history of the tribe and our commitment to be good stewards of these ancestral lands is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those ancestors who came before us. We give thanks to the generous care with which the Anishinaabe and those members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan have given and continue to give to this land and our community. Clerk Schmelzer, will you take the roll?
Commissioner Alsager?
Here.
Commissioner Demarath?
Here.
Commissioner Perschebacker?
Here.
Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Skalitsky?
Here.
Vice Mayor Eke?
Here.
Mayor Wingard?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we have two presentations this evening. The first is going to be the 2025 Community Improvement Awards presentation by Manuela Paladaico.
All right, good evening, commissioners. I'm here tonight for a very fun presentation about our Community Improvement Awards for 2025. So I'm representing the Planning Commission. So every year since 1979, this has been a way to really acknowledge the property owners for their investment in our community. These projects, they add value, they bring pride and joy to Mount Pleasant. This year's photographs were taken by students from GI Tech, and we are very grateful for Andrea Langley for her continuous leadership at GI Tech and collaboration with the city on this work. So we'll start with the residential category with our winner, 111 Maxwell. This project included a re-roof, window replacements, and the main feature, a 20x8 covered deck, which added a lot of value to the house and the public realm. To receive the award tonight, we have the owner, Christine Fowler. Are you here, Christine? Yes? All right, so come on. Please join me in congratulating Christine Fowler and Hoffman Construction. Well, the mayor will give you a frame with a professional photograph, and we can take a picture. Thank you.
I want to give a thanks to Hoffman Builders, Scott Hoffman. It was just a two-man team. And Expert Electric, Kenny. They were wonderful. And Mount Pleasant Plumbing and Heating for new furnace and new water heater.
Great.
Well, water heater, it's a water heater on demand. So we put some improvements inside as well.
Nice.
That you can't see. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Cup release yesterday.
No, I was not.
All right, next I'll call Nick Wilson, the IT director for Wilson Steel Fab and Machine at 1217 North Mission Street. The project was approved in 2022, but Mr. Wilson and his family were able to conclude the project in 2025. There is also a future large expansion coming soon, so stay tuned with Wilson Fab. Industrial projects like this one, they bring jobs and economic development to the city and region, and we're really proud of being Wilson Steel Fab's home. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, sorry, I failed to show the amazing picture here. And I also forgot to mention the students. I'm gonna announce them later, but this picture here on the left side is the after the reform, so from Brady Edwards. And that's the picture of the house from the before. And here's the picture by Phoenix French. And we have the previous photograph here on the right. So they extended the walls and added the roof, so you can see it way better from Mission Street. So the last one, I have the mixed use project. We don't have a mixed use project every year, so I'm always very, very happy to be able to report back on those improvements. So we have the building at 500 South Mission Street, had the commercial storefront vacant for many, many years. So I would like to call the owners, Danny Leonard and Chelsea House, to come and receive this award for their new business. Premier Central Michigan MedSpad. The renovated building looks astonishing with repairs done to the roof, signage, windows, siding, painting, and railing, and lots of renovations indoors as well. Plus, the owners were supported by the Mission Picker DDA Facade Improvement and Streetscape Incentive Program, which paid for the window replacement work. So please join me in congratulating Danny Leonard, Chelsea House, and Greenwall for their work that they've done on this property. All right, so to finish the year's recognition, I would also like to invite the artists behind the great pictures to come here and take a picture with our mayor. So please join me congratulating Brady Edwards, Phoenix French, and Mason Haynes, and their instructor, Andrew Langley from the Graphics Arts Studio at GI Tech. Congratulations.
Okay, that brings us to our second presentation for the evening. We have the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe here to present on the Michigan Indian Industrial Boarding School property. Manager DeSense, if you'd like to make an introduction.
Christian said he was on. Was he? Yep, you can let that. Well, good evening and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Eric Rodriguez. I serve as the Interim Public Relations Director for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe. It's always an honor and pleasure to be here to talk about the important work that's being done with our Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School. We truly have a group of passionate individuals who remain committed to this project and see it through. As neighbors of the property with the city of Mount Pleasant, we feel that for us to keep you informed about what's happening, the work that's been done is crucial for the continued success and development of the project. So with us tonight to share some of the highlights and the work that's being done is our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Marcella Haddon, who is here in person. And then online with a presentation about what the future looks like and some of the exciting work to happen is Christian Nacarado. He is our pro bono architect who has been guiding us and a member of the Sault Ste. Marie Band of Chippewa Indians. So if I could turn it over to Marcella, she's going to walk you through the process. But once again, thank you so much, Chi Miigwech, for allowing us the opportunity here tonight.
Hi. It's down a little. Bujo, Nibengisis Quay and Dijikas, Wabajeji Dora, Saginaw Keen and Donchiba, Anishinaabe Quay and Dell. So that is some of our beautiful Anishinaabe language. As you know, maybe you don't know, but from the boarding schools, a lot of our language was lost. So whenever we have a chance to say it, you know, and share it, then we do that. So I told you that my native name is Summer Moon because I was born in August under the summer moon. And I'm from the Martin clan. And I am here from Mount Pleasant. So, all right. So here's our committee. Our executive positions are all tribal members in accordance with our bylaws. The chairwoman, the vice chair is Alice Jo Ricketts, and she is our tribal council chaplain. And then we have our treasurer, Phil Jackson. He is from our environmental department. And then we have Mr. Eric Rodriguez, who is our secretary PR person. Then we have 3 community members. The departments, Isabel Osamic is from the language department. So at every meeting, she comes in and gives us a prayer in the language, and then she gives us a phrase that we attempt to say. Sometimes it comes out fluently, our blood memory remembers it. The way that it looks is different from how it sounds. So we always appreciate her at our meetings. And then we have a lot of people who support our work just as well. We have William Johnson. He is a curator, a Ziba Wing operations manager. We have Christian Nacarado. He's going to be doing the presentation later. So actually we have 3 parts. We have the boarding school, which is the past, and then we have what we're doing now, which is I'm presenting. And then Christian is going to present what the future will look like for the area. We have Anita Hurd from Ziba Wing and Mindy, Dr. Wilson Root from CMU. And then we have some people some great people that we work with from the Tubman School of Architecture at the University of Michigan. And they came to us about 3 years ago to do some LiDAR work. So I actually have a demonstration for that today. And then we also have Dr. Sarah Surface Evans from the State Historic Preservation Office. And like I said, Christian will be up after me to present what the buildings could look like. He came to us in 2020. He was working he was teaching at Oxford in Germany. And he's seen some of Dr. Sarah Surface Evans, some of her articles and stuff that she wrote about the boarding school. She's done a lot of archaeological field schools out there. And so he sent an email and he said, I'm just wondering if you would like my pro bono services. And, we fell out of our chair and we're like, well, yeah, of course. We weren't really ready for him. So his first contract was really to help us determine what the scope of work would be. Incorporating him. So here we are 5-6 years later, and we've done a lot of work. It's just amazing. So we meet with Christian once a month and then bi-weekly at our architect meetings, and then he's ready for a new contract. So the buildings update, we have 7 buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places. 3 of the buildings are a priority, meaning that those buildings are in good enough shape that we could rehabilitate those. And then we have 4 other buildings that aren't. The boys' dormitory, non-contributing, that just means that it was built after the school closed. This is a top view. You can see all the buildings are pretty close together. The large boys' dorm way up at the top. You can't really see that. Maybe a little bit. I know it probably looks Greek to you. I wanted to throw that in anyway. And then, so in 2024, we noticed when we were going into the buildings that you could actually see the sky from, inside. It's like, well, we have to somehow repair that so the buildings don't deteriorate even more. So the tribe, we hired Konwinski Construction. The tribe paid $32,000 for temporary patchwork. Here's a picture of it. So if you look, I don't know if my mouse will work. No, it doesn't. So the picture on the left is where you can see the holes that were through the roof, and this is the auditorium schoolhouse. And then the picture on the right is where the repairs came in. And then also in, I believe it was maybe 2022, we received a $1.7 million bipartisan infrastructure law grant. And we were at our monthly committee meeting, and one of the ladies offered to write the grant. Our grant department wasn't able to. They were bombarded with work. It's like, it's just not the time right now. So she said, would you mind if I went and wrote the grant? So we're like, yeah, sure. And then she came back and she said, oh yeah, by the way, we got the grant for 1.7 million. So we fell out of our chairs again. And so 4 of the buildings have been totally mitigated. They are beautiful. And I do have some photos of inside of it. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna go back because I want to mention that we hired Environmental Resource Group and then Green for Life. They're the subcontractors that we worked with. So right now, for 3 of the buildings, we're shoring up. And as we go along in this work, you know, we're not historic experts, so we have to learn what terms are too. So shoring up is making sure that the building is safe for the workers that go in there for the next phase that needs to be done, because those last 3 buildings are actually collapsing in on themselves. So we have to make sure that everyone is safe and that they can be mitigated. Here is a picture on the left. These are the gentlemen that are hand scraping the paint off of the wood. And the right photo is where it's already, it's done. It's beautiful. I really had to fight for the work to get done, for it to be hand scraped, because it costs a lot more. So the cheaper option would be to take all the wood out, but it's so beautiful that we were able to do both, to actually have that work done. And so this is what it looks like on the right. This is the wood shop. And then we also learned, looking at National Historic or National Park Service photos, that there's this process called mothballing. And that's where you temporarily like button up a building. So, you know, it keeps the weather out. We would go into the buildings and it would be raining and stormy, and, you know, the floors would be wet. They would be seeping down. So we learned this process. And again, we went back to the tribe and we're like, well, here's what it is. We need more money. And they're like, okay. So it was a lot of money, $64,900. And so here's a picture of the photo afterwards. And so you can see in the windows, so they have plexiglass that lets the light in. That will kill the mold and the mildew. And then also in some of the other windows, it has air vents, and so it lets the air breathe. And this is what the gymnasium looks like, north and south view. And then we have the wood shop, east and west view. And you can see on the second page, the top of that is where the roof was temporarily replaced. And then this is what it looks like inside. And then out of the blue, we get a call from Procter & Gamble. Eric called me and he's like, do we have any work for Procter & Gamble? They have this Native American network where they have 100 people that they fly in from around the country to do community service. And, you know, I was thinking, no, not really, not for 100 people. But then after we thought about it, we thought, well, yeah, let's have them, you know, it's a big property out there. We own 15 acres and the city owns 320 acres. So we went out there for the day. And this is a picture of the work afterwards. This is a fountain in front of the buildings. And this building, or this fountain, if you see in historic photos, you will see staged children sitting by it. So really, this fountain was really no more than a facade for the government to say, look at what we're doing. You know, we're doing so much for, you know, these children and whatever. So it will never be a fountain again. And Christian has came to us with different options, and we like a lot of them. A couple that come to mind would be to have a memorial for the children who had passed while attending the school there. And so our research has shown that 227 individuals are students. We don't know where the resting place is, and we're not done with the research. That's just where it stopped right now. So we would like to have a memorial with their names there. And then every year at Honoring, Healing, and Remembering, we recognize them by saying their name. And the other option would be to have a sacred garden in there and grow our sacred herbs. So it would be our cedar, sweetgrass, sage, and tobacco. This is a side view of the auditorium after it was cleaned up. So there's no more brush around there. And then LiDAR, like I said, we had those wonderful people come to us a couple years ago and said, would you like, us to do some LiDAR free of charge? And we're like, oh yeah. So they applied for a grant for $15,000. It was an NEH grant, National Endowment for Humanities. And of course, the new administration got away, or did away for all of those grants. So there was a private individual, an alumni of U of M, or the Tubman College, that donated the money because he felt that it was, that important. So here is a sample of what LiDAR is. It always looks dark out, but I don't think they did this in the dark. I just think that something with the cameras making the sky dark. So this is up from the pond area. This is the front of the school building. We do have a barbed wire fence in front. That was also from a tribal heritage grant. The lighting is from a tribal heritage grant. So we're coming around the building now, and then we're gonna go inside. So there's all the brush and everything that they helped us remove. So this is what it looks like on the inside. This is an exact replication of what it looks like. And then this is the stage, the auditorium. We're coming around. And then this is the back of it. So this was just a sample. They're not done with it yet, but I wanted to share that. We just finished completing 2 National Park Service Tribal Heritage grants of $46,000. So we hired a structural engineer because we have to make sure that Christian schematic designs can withstand whatever, the structural engineer will tell us whether or not we can do what Christian proposes. And then we also hired a preservationist, historic preservationist, Jessica Flores. And she, in the end, we have an architectural assessment and historic preservation plan. And Jessica recommends that none of the buildings be demolished because once they're gone, they're gone. And even the sheer size of the buildings, if you were a children arriving at maybe 5 years old, 6 years old, 7, the tallness and just the buildings itself is a statement of how grand and, how it would have been scary as a child to even be there. So we don't want to demolish any of the buildings. We're still looking for grants. We applied for a Santa Fe Natural Tobacco grant for 25. That was not awarded. And so we're going to be looking for Save America's Treasures. And those grants, I believe, are a matching grant, hundreds of thousands of matching grants. And then, so the National Register of Historic Places where the buildings are, we hired Sharon Ferraro to take our current status, which is at a state level, to take that to a national level. I went Friday and I presented just a little, I was with Sharon. Sharon presented it to the board. the State Historic Preservation Review Board, and they voted unanimously to send it to Washington. So we have 45 days for them to come back and let us know, which, fingers crossed, it'll be approved. And the only other national level higher than that would be a landmark, and there are boarding schools that are a landmark. And then in the summer, we do have a summertime program where we ask people to volunteer, but we do pay them. We pay them very well. They get paid $100 a day to walk an hour around the grounds, keep the trespassers and everybody out. That's from July to October. We have to extend it to October because of Halloween, because people want to come out, you know, Devil's Night and do the ghost hunting and stuff. And then the funds come from my budget, and then we also fundraise. So we do a lot of fundraising. And we're also in very close contact with our tribal police chief, Harry Ames, Officer Ames. And then coming soon, we are developing a website that'll be a place for resources. And also, if you're an Indigenous person and one of your parents went, or a relative went to the school, you can request those records. Those are going to become available. So you have to be a family member and you say, my aunt went there, I wonder what happened to her, you know, and so those records will become available. They're still working out the criteria, but that will be coming soon. And one way to access those would be from our website. So it's an ethical dissemination of culturally sensitive information. And then our next steps for the work that we're doing is to call for quotes, masonry work quotes. We're still waiting for those. And then once we have that, Christian will compile everything into a PDF booklet with renderings. And then we're going to do a cost generator. So we're going to send that out and get costs for it to see what it will be. And then we're also currently working on a funding plan with our tribal administrator, Dustin Davis. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Commissioner Alsager.
I just have a couple comments. Years back, I was fortunate enough to rent the building that had the auditorium in it, and it was for
Really?
a gymnastics building or gymnastics center. And at the time, I was told that the circular one that you're calling the fountain area, I was told that was a rose garden. And
It might have been, yeah.
It might have been. And then the other thing I wanted to say was towards the end of the time that we were there, we would hear these loud noises, and it was the pileated woodpeckers that were trying to get the bugs in the slats between the window panes, and it broke some of the windows.
Oh,
That was a long time ago.
interesting. I like
Yeah.
your story. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
We also want to do oral history stories too, and that would be a couple of
Sure.
yeah, a nice story to add in there. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon me.
We had
Oh, yes.
Hi,
Maureen.
Hi, Marcella. Thank you for coming. This is really wonderful. I am so impressed by this because I recall when we were talking about this earlier before, doing the initial early research, what it looked like and what it looks like right now. It's amazing. And I am happy to hear that you have decided not to demolish any building. I am really happy about that. Okay, because it is important to preserve history. You mentioned at a certain point that, especially when you were talking about the NEH grant, the recall. And I do recall that there was attempt to digitalize some information, and you were also talking about the oral history project. To what extent has the grant recall or the change in terms of what is now funded, how has that affected the work that you would be doing, especially with the oral history project and the digitalization?
Digitization is from another grant.
Okay.
It's like museum sciences
Mhm,
and
mhm.
some other thing where Ziva Wing has a digitization specialist that's putting those records
Mhm,
together.
mhm.
And what was the other question?
The,
Oh, oral history project.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, we're not really close to that yet.
Okay.
We have to make sure that we, have the system down, and I don't know if we're gonna be talking to survivors, but definitely, descendants of parents who went, because there really is nobody, living that has attended there, so we're all
Mhm.
descendants of people who have attended.
Mhm.
So that'd be very, very interesting. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to
I
that.
would be interested in that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Are you working with is there a connection with any other boarding schools in the nation or actually internationally? Because there are a series of, there are histories of boarding school experiences in Canada, across the nation. Are you in conversation with any of these particular groups or boarding schools in terms of exchange of information, coordinating, information and preservation of history?
Yes, there's a coalition, Native American Boarding School Coalition, that we are in contact with, and they're doing a lot of the actual oral histories of survivors.
Mhm.
So we look up to them because they've been around longer than us, and they just do such great work that, yeah, absolutely, we're in contact with them.
Okay, I have other questions, but that's for later. I'll just do it.
Okay.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
yes, thank you. So, yeah, we have Christian Nacarado online who's going to complete the second half of the presentation this evening. I know Christian's probably traveling somewhere, as he does frequently, but we love to have him in Michigan. I'm not sure where he's at this evening, but we appreciate Christian joining us. So he's going to kind of give you an overview of what those next steps and then some of the schematical designs and architectural designs that he has shared with our community, and talk about what we're trying to accomplish here moving forward as a continuation to what Marcella presented. So Christian, can you hear us okay tonight?
I can. Can you all hear me
You sound great. Thank you.
and see me? Okay, good, good. Thank you, Eric. I am traveling. I'm actually in Hanover, New Hampshire tonight. I'm doing an event tomorrow with Julian Brave Noise Cat, who directed a film called Sugarcane about residential schools in Canada. So, and presenting a little bit of the work here too, as part of that. I'm very honored to be here to share the hard work that we've done over the past 5 years. It's also wonderful to hear at the beginning of the meeting about what good care is being taken of many other buildings throughout Mount Pleasant. Because that's kind of that's one of the starting points for our project at the boarding school. So I'm gonna send a request to share my screen to someone. Oh, and oh, perfect. And I will share it. Can everyone see that?
Yes,
I
yes.
can, yes.
And now it's full screen. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but the Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School is an incredibly important architectural site, historical site. And it's a collection of buildings that are some of the oldest in all of Mount Pleasant. Older, many of them are older than the building that you all are, the building that you are all in today, and the fact that you're in the Borden building after a renovation means that you understand the incredible transformation that can take place of a historic building when it's taken care of. And these buildings are certainly buildings that merit that kind of attention and care. Here you see the site from an aerial view. Did this advance? Everyone can see?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. You can see the 320-acre site that was the original boarding school site. If we zoom in on it, you see more of the kind of natural features of the site. Of course, you have the river a little bit off-site, but a tremendous amount of woodland and wetland that actually comes across the middle of the site from east to west, and an approximately 40-acre parcel that was never extensively logged. So beautiful forest there. And here's the 15-acre parcel that it now belongs to the tribe. And it contains most of the historic structures that remain on the site. It contains 7 historic buildings, which here you see we're zooming in once more. And here's a kind of drawing of what the roofs of those buildings look like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just off screen here at the bottom. And I've given a lot of presentations about this project over the past 5 years, some at Honoring, Healing, and Remembering, some at the State of the Tribe meetings. And so that to sort of summarize that work and those presentations, the goal in these still kind of early phases has been to provide a strategic vision for the future of the boarding school site. And it doesn't mean that we're going to do all of these things, but we want to have a kind of we want to have a dream to shoot for, and we want that dream for the tribe and for all of the people who are affected by this place to be significant and worthy of the history of the place. So we've developed that dream into what we would call a schematic design, which is not at the level that it's ready to be built yet, but it's a series of design ideas and some spatial ideas and some structural ideas that are going to guide us as we move forward. And so the work that Marcella was talking about, making this kind of digital twin through LiDAR scanning of the existing conditions is part of that process, is part of the historical record of these places. It's also a really useful tool to architects and engineers who can use that 3-dimensional digital model to generate our own construction documents. It's useful for contractors and builders to reference as well. And also the mothballing work, the repair work, the kind of incremental things that we need to do to make sure the buildings stay as intact as possible until we get to the point where we can really begin the heavier preservation work and construction work in some cases. So here's a kind of summary of what that strategic vision of the future for this site looks like in our mind. We've identified, like Marcella said, 3 priority buildings for reuse into the future. They're in the best shape for renovation. They're centrally located. They are, arguably the most historically significant of the 3. And in the case of the workshop, which is the building that we're hoping to restore first, it's the kind of smallest and most manageable renovation project. And so here you see an aerial shot that the tribe's GIS department was able to take using a drone, showing the workshop building, building 1, the gymnasium building number 2, and the classroom building number 3. Then you have the large girls dormitory, you have the superintendent's building, and then the small girls dormitory down here are the 3 other kind of secondary buildings that are in much worse shape in most cases. And then here you have the boys dormitory, which, like Marcella said, from the National Register of Historic Places perspective, is considered non-contributing. So because it was not completed until after the boarding school stopped operating as a federal boarding school. And here as well is the site of the fountain. So the purpose that we've decided to pursue for this site through a bunch of different meetings and surveys with members of the tribe, members of the community, descendants of survivors, is overall this. If this was a site that was historically about the removal of children from their families, of culture from those children, of language from those children, then the purpose that we would like to bring back to the site or change is to turn it into a place for the return of all those things. The kind of invigoration of traditional arts, language immersion, a variety of different programs to achieve that. And so there are 5 programs that have broad support within the community to bring to the site: language, arts, a place for healing, a museum, and a memorial. And we've sort of divided those up here into what we're calling more active and maybe a little bit more passive activities. Because when we talked about the idea of reoccupying these sites of trauma and tragedy for many people, it felt more than uncomfortable to think about doing something new in these buildings. And so we've tried to really limit the more active pieces, the language, the arts, and even the healing, the kind of program pieces, what architects normally call it. And we've tried to have a really light touch approach to the renovation and bringing in the more passive pieces, the museum, when you'll see what we mean by museum in a moment, and a memorial as more quiet, reflective, personal moments. And those we're calling part of honoring, healing, and remembering the children who were here. And there are a bunch of principles that have guided that overall purpose for the site. I'll go through how we're doing those in each set of buildings. So in the gymnasium and classroom buildings, like I said, we're having a really kind of light touch approach. And we're saying we want to make these buildings safe and we want to stabilize these buildings, but we don't want to sanitize these buildings. We don't want to cover over any of the history. We don't want it to be a space that you walk into and suddenly think that we want it to reflect the reality of what happened there, and putting a fresh coat of paint can be a way to cover that kind of thing up. So we want to be very careful about how we do that. And the phrase that we've been using is we want to let the silence speak for itself in those buildings. In the workshop building, we are generally following those same principles, but we do also understand that there's a need to bring a new kind of presence to the site. Just so people understand that it's, obviously there's some security concerns, and just so people understand that this place has begun to change. And the workshop is the really kind of single place that we are planning to do that. But again, it's going to be a new presence that's minimal, that's not going to kind of sanitize or clean up everything that you see, but is going to work from the existing history that's present in these buildings, in these materials. And then all three of those buildings taken together have a number of principles that we've tried to apply. We want to focus attention outside because the heaviness of these walls, of course, was a barrier that kept children in or kept them apart from their families. But if you look out these windows to the countryside, to the kind of landscape all around, you see that there was always a kind of relationship with the land that was accessible in some way. We want to also, therefore, dissolve the boundaries. This is a teaching lodge that was built on the site for HHR a couple of years ago, and we want to use that as a kind of model for how we might think about architecture on this site in the future, bringing the kind of traditional architecture into the very kind of non-Anishinaabe architecture that is currently characterizing the site, and thinking about how we might dissolve the boundaries between those two. And then in some cases, letting the land return. We have no intention of demolishing any of the buildings, like Marcella said, but some of them may not be renovated to the same kind of perfect standard, and that may provide opportunities for gardens and that kind of thing, even within the footprints of some of the buildings. Okay, so here are the plans to be a little bit more specific. So these are the drawings that I've coordinated with the structural engineers and our historic preservationists. And we're hoping to send these out once we get some masonry information to contractors to get preliminary pricing. And then we'll be able to make decisions about which things we can do and which things we can't do. But these are our dreams for those three main buildings and what we would really like to be able to do. So we'll start with the workshop, which is also kind of the plan for the first project. This is what it looks like from ground level. And here's the first floor of what we're proposing for the workshop. So you can see it's very similar to what we have there right now. Anything that's shown in gray, these walls in gray are new, but anything that's shown in white are existing walls. So most of the changes that we make to any of these buildings are just about kind of accessibility, making sure that a wheelchair or an elder is able to get into the buildings and access the spaces, including a lift. And then some things for, having new restroom facilities or having a new fire stair, making sure it's up to code in a bunch of different ways. So here is that main entrance up the ramp and into the workshop lobby space. Here is that workshop space, which also has an office, reusing that existing kind of screen that you may have noticed in Marcela's photographs. The kitchen, which is definitely a necessity for any kinds of events that might be taking place in this building. Here you can see that screen. This is the view from what will be the office in the future. And this is the kind of very simple approach that we're thinking about to bring a new presence to this space. On the south side, on the main floor, we're going to just make a very simple open community space that can be used for exhibitions, that could be used for meetings, that could be used for ceremony, could be used for all kinds of different things. And that also benefits from the secondary entrance, so we would be able to have more people in this space than some of the other spaces. Secondary exit, sorry, excuse me. This is the existing kind of loading dock, which we would modify to make a little terrace outside. And then moving up through the building, you can go up through the lift to the second floor, or up through the stairs to this second floor, which uses almost all of the existing walls and just adds a few new partitions to modify the scale of the space a little. So you can see the existing closets that are kept, some of these existing walls, even some of the existing doorways are kept, but infilled in a very kind of simple way so that you can tell what was there before compared to what has been built since. Most of the spaces on this floor are offices or studio spaces to be used in a bunch of possible ways in the future for visiting researchers or writers or artists in residence. Dedicated spaces for healing, for traditional healing, dedicated spaces for medicines to be stored and dried, a space for people who are here to dine together, a kitchenette here, restroom, and then an archive space, like Marcela mentioned. Descendants may come here and access a digital archive to do some research about their ancestors. A classroom building on the south side of the second floor for language classes or other types of classes. And then on the north side, this kind of large reading room with a high ceiling and the archive that I already mentioned. So here you can see what it looks like in a section cut. So before we were looking down like a floor plan, and here is the section of what we're proposing in the new building. We would have the kitchen, as I mentioned, the office and the reading room, and in all cases, the brick that's already there in the building would be kept. So there are a number of different community spaces. Here, the very large one on the first floor, the workshop and lobby could be that type of space as well, and then the reading room up above. And we're making some pretty minimal changes to the facades. In most cases, we're going to restore all of the brick and the stone, repoint it and replace it as needed. And we're going to open up all of the windows that have been bricked in over the years. So here's what the facade might look like on the west side in the future. Here's that opening to the community room and that terrace that I mentioned. Here is the east facade, the other side of the building, which would become the main entrance to the building. It already is the main entrance to the building. And we would take this not original kind of two-story opening that actually this door opens. It doesn't open because it's blocked by the location of the floor plate right now. And we would open up all these windows on the ground floor We'd bring a new ramp up, an accessible ramp up. And this is a kind of wooden screen against a glass opening into the stairwell that's beyond there. A canopy, a woven wooden canopy as well. And most of the purpose here is just to signal the location of a new entry. The woven wood screen and canopy is still in development. It's still a kind of early schematic idea, but we want it to work from the kind of tradition of the black ash basket that if anyone's been to the Zeebwing Center, you've probably seen some of these incredible artworks, and even much more simple ones, and kind of simple ramp construction that ties all of those things together at an architectural scale. And we want, so as part of the masonry restoration, there needs to be a removal of the outer layer of masonry. If anyone's got a brick house, then you may have tuck pointed or repointed the brick on it before. And we wanted to take that opportunity to actually honor what the children had already done in some locations where they had carved medicine wheels or their initials in certain locations on the bricks. And in this case, we wanted to do it at a larger scale, but in a very kind of subtle way. So you can barely tell hold on to go back to this, you can barely tell here, but there's actually a circle made of a slightly darker color just in between the bricks on the mortar. And that's what we're proposing to do, something that would look a little bit like this, that if you're not looking for it, you would actually probably even miss it. So a very kind of subtle change. At the gym and the auditorium, like I said, the changes are really quite minimal. The gym especially, we're doing very little except adding what we need to make it accessible and code compliant. On the first floor, this is what we're proposing. There are, as you can see, very few bits of new wall, just a little bit of gray around where we introduce a lift, a few new stairs to work out the movement through the building a little bit better, new mechanical spaces, electrical spaces, new bathrooms. So here's the entrance, same as the existing, but with new stairs, so you can move north and south. And as well, that building actually, fortunately, already has a ramp for an accessible entrance on the other side of the building into a kind of secondary exhibition lobby. And the entire ground floor space can actually function as a kind of exhibition space, not with necessarily anything extra that's been brought to show, but actually just walking through this space is its own kind of exhibition. That's what we meant by a kind of museum. It's the buildings themselves. If we don't paint over them, if we don't hide any of the history, the buildings themselves tell the story of the boarding schools. Also the required services, the electrical, the mechanical, as I already mentioned. Then there's a stair up to the second floor in the existing location. There's a lift in the other corner that takes you up as well. And the second floor is almost entirely unchanged. You can see the new gray walls, but other than that, it's very much the same as existing. It's been cleaned out since this. It looks much better than this already. And then there is one extra sort of floor. It's a smaller portion of the floor. It's the mezzanine, and we would have the lift go up to that level as well. So it was accessible for everyone. On the north facade, it's very similar to existing, but there would be the addition of a slightly new window openings where they'd been removed previously. This is not an original window. And this would be an embodiment of that principle of focusing that attention outside the building as much as possible. So when you're waiting for the lift, you can look out actually at the kind of space in between the two buildings to the north. So here you can see that's that view. We would do the same, just restoring actually in this case the original window opening location on the south side of the facade on the second floor. But it is overall mostly unchanged. We want to have a really light touch and let the buildings speak for themselves. Finally, we have the classroom building. And this is, again, a space that we don't want to have a lot of programming in necessarily, but there are some more significant changes at this building. And I can tell you why in a moment. So this is what it looks like from the east, from the kind of main axis, from the fountain. And this is what the first floor looks like. The existing entry on the east side, if we think back to the kind of history of it and what Marcella had mentioned, and you imagine being a 4 or 5-year-old child coming to this place for the first time, this is a really imposing facade, a really imposing building, and potentially frightening building. You can see how kind of central this building was in the collection of the many buildings, some of which are still there, some of which are not. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to change that as well. We would like to turn that around, the purpose of that kind of front facade, which is so kind of central and important to the history of this site. And so our thought is we would like to close the door, that eastern door, that was the kind of threshold that so many students would have passed through in their first days at the school, and we'd like to close it forever, with the message that no Native kid is ever going to have to cross that threshold again. We were thinking about kind of historic precedents for doors like this, kind of sculptural, artistically informed doors. And we were thinking about Anishinaabe artists like Christy Belcourt, working from kind of traditional motifs, this very much like beadwork, although this is a painting. This is a painting that she's done. And thinking about how that might be a kind of a permanent closure, but an artistic closure to that front door. And so if the eastern side is closed, then we have to have a new entry from the other, and it makes the most sense to have it from the other side because it's closest to the entrance of the other two high priority buildings. We have another kind of woven screen, another ramp, but in this case, we're ramping down this is the existing entry on the western facade, actually just made a little bit larger. And at first, it may seem a little counterintuitive to enter a building through the basement, but we think that that's a really important part of telling the story of the kids here as well. Like Marcella said, we haven't started the formal organization of all the oral history, but we have heard a lot of oral history about the school. And one of the stories that we have heard is about how the kids would often go down into the basement of various buildings in order to speak the language or to practice ceremony in secret. And we actually think that that is a really fitting place, therefore, to start the experience of entering this building, to go down into that, and the entrance lobby actually be in this underground space. And from that entrance lobby, you can move up either by the stair. This is an existing stair, which would need to be fixed slightly, and then replacement of an existing stair with a new lift so it can be accessible as well. And from there, you move up, again, very minimal changes, almost no new walls here, except for around the lift, as was the case in the gym. And you move up in the main floor into this kind of main atrium space. And it sounds like some of you may have been in this space previously. And this auditorium space at the center of the building is a really significant one to the whole site. And this is a place where we think it's appropriate to bring a new presence to the site as well. When we had our structural engineers come out and assess the different buildings, almost everything seemed like it could be reused. The masonry was in good shape, the stone, the brick, it needs work, but it's in okay shape. The wood seems to be acceptable in most cases. The one thing that seems beyond saving in these three high priority buildings, at least, is the wooden roof. And so our engineers have said that they think the wooden roof of the whole building likely needs to be replaced. And if that's the case, we began asking ourselves, well, if we're going to replace it, are we just going to try to, fake it and replace it with something that looks like a certain point in history, which is, of course, normal practice? Or do we take that as an opportunity to bring a new presence to this site? And so we've decided to do a little bit of both. From the front facade, what you would see from the street will be a replication of the existing eastern roof. And the same will be true from the west, replication of existing. But at the center, we wanted to take that kind of message of the teaching lodge and the traditional Anishinaabe architecture and bring it to this site. And so what we've proposed is this wooden, basically wigwam or wiginogan frame made from doubled wooden pieces covered in a kind of glass shingle, which is following pretty closely some of the techniques, but in a more contemporary fashion, perhaps. Some of the very techniques that you saw in the teaching lodge at the beginning of the presentation, and that making this into a space that both preserves the history but brings an important new presence. We were looking at precedents like this, which was a church in Spain that was bombed during the war, and how they kind of had the same sort of attitude of a very light touch approach, but changing the character with a new kind of transparent roof. And of course, that dissolves the boundary between inside and outside and powerfully focuses more attention outside of the building in the daytime, but also we were thinking about how ultimately it could be an amazing place to look up at night as well. So this is our kind of vision, our strategic vision for all of these buildings. We're not, we've made a lot of progress, but we know there's a long way to go. But these buildings are already going, some of them going on 130, 140 years old. So we want to make sure we get it right. So we're taking our time to make sure that we do.
Well, thank you very much, Christian. Hopefully you enjoyed the update that we provided here today. Of course, we look at continued collaboration. We want to make sure that we invite all of you to participate. And I know Marcel, the committee, is always looking for ways to partner. So if you have ideas or further updates, we would take those. I know we're a little over on time today, so we don't want to delay too much further, but you know where to find us. We'll be more than happy to answer any of those questions that you may have. I think Christian has a couple more minutes if you have just one or two questions tonight, but want to give you the opportunity here tonight.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sklitsky, any questions? You got cut off for the last time.
Yeah, that was a really powerful presentation, so thank you for your time and putting that together for us. It sounds like the relationship between the interior and exterior is really important for the overall design and vision for the property. So I'm curious what ways that the city can strategically plan to not interrupt those visions.
Yeah, that is a very good question, and I don't feel qualified to answer it. But I feel like maybe that is a good question for us to think about at the next committee meeting, because all of these decisions. I'm just the architect doing the drawings, but it's always in the meetings that I get the best feedback. I think, my general reaction is we want to keep it looking the way it is, inside and out. I think that principle of having a light touch approach would probably be, intuitively what we would want to do for the landscape all around as well. I imagine there are going to be some paths for kind of walking and kind of quiet reflection around at least the 15 acres that are the tribe's site at the moment. But it is really powerful if you've been to the site to look west, especially, at sunset, and see the kind of meadow and see the forest to the north and see the kind of trees. I think the land there is very powerful. So I would I think keeping it as is would be the best.
Commissioner Eke, if you have probably a final
Yeah,
question.
Christian and Marcella and
Eric.
Eric. Yes, I am I do cultural studies, okay? And I work with indigenous communities. So for me, this is a gift. This presentation for me is an amazing gift. I am flummoxed almost, right? But I like the foregrounding, the emphasis of recuperation or healing. So not only are we recovering or recuperating the space, the building, but it's also history, it's memory, it's that whole space. It's also the city, because this is part of the city's history. And in doing this, we're also trying to heal the city. It's not just simply the tribe that was affected. Whatever happened to tribal members had and still have historical impact on this particular city. And this is why this is important for me. I like the restorative, and I'm using this word deliberately, the restorative nature of this particular piece, what it's trying to do and how it is trying to speak to us and how it's trying to speak to everybody. That brings me to my question. I'm going to flip my colleague's question. Okay, how can the city help to achieve this particular goal?
Christian, I will put that one on you. I'll take that.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. And commissioners, thank you so much again for your time. And I think it's continued cooperation, collaboration, and communication, right? It's the opportunity to be able to present this to you tonight, to share our vision, and then see how you fit in and get our residents' guidance as well. We know that, as you said, it's all of Mount Pleasant. It's the tribe. It's us working collaboratively to share this message and help with the healing of this. We know it's very traumatic for many of our citizens to speak of, and the intergenerational trauma that has been seen throughout generations that have been caused by this boarding school era. So I think we'll continue to reach out for those opportunities. I know, Marcella, during the process of honoring, healing, and remembering, when we updated this for the first time, we sought any feedback, any guidance, anybody that wants to be involved as a stakeholder. We welcome those opportunities. We will continue to welcome those opportunities because we can't do it alone, and we do not want to do it alone. So I think it's just the opportunity for us to continue to answer any questions you may have and see how we can all work together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again for the time tonight.
Thank you so much. Okay, that brings us to additions and deletions to the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions that members of the commission would like to make to the agenda this evening? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented. Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eke, seconded by Commissioner Rollins. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. All right, that'll bring us to public input on agenda items. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak on any item on the agenda, please step up to the microphone and form a queue. You'll be given 5 minutes. Please state your name, address, and the agenda item you are speaking on for the record. If you are using a Zoom, please indicate you'd like to speak using the raised hand function. Are there any emails? Okay, any raised hands? Gotcha. Not seeing anyone in the audience coming up to speak on agenda items at this time. I'm gonna go ahead and close public input on agenda items. And that'll bring us to receipt of petitions and communications. Manager DeSense, if you would.
Yep, receipt of petitions and communications this evening includes monthly report on police-related citizen complaints, request for municipal investment in the Humane Animal Treatment Society Community Cat Trap Neuter Return Fund, minutes of the Traffic Control Committee regular meeting from October, resignation of Rachel Putnam Farley from the Planning Commission, letters received from residents regarding economic development, received city requests for Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% allocations.
Thank you. Then the next item on the agenda is the consent items. Manager DeSense, hand it back to you again.
Absolutely. Consent items this evening includes approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held February 23rd, 2026. Consider approval of an advance commitment of 900 tons of road salt through the State of Michigan's M-Ideal Purchasing Program. Consider recommendation from the Planning Commission to reappoint Commissioner Havel as the representative of the Planning Commission to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Consider awarding the contract for the 2026 sewer relining project to Inland Waters Pollution Control of Detroit for $98,066. Consider awarding the 2026 sidewalk replacement project bid to H&H Concrete of Clare for $240,066 and budget amendments of $56,556 in the Capital Improvements Fund and $52,427 in the Sidewalk Replacement Fund. Consider awarding the contract for the 2026 Well 19 Rehabilitation Project to Peerless Midwest for $99,631 and a budget amendment for the same. Consider approval of the purchase of a 2026 Exmark Laser Z Zero Turn Mower from Hoffman's Equipment of Saginaw for $68,399, a 2026 Kawasaki Mule SX, and a 2026 Polaris Ranger 570 from Central Motorsports of Mount Pleasant for $30,834 and a budget amendment of $25,000. Consider setting a public hearing for March 23rd, 2026 for the proposed changes to amend Chapter 93 of the Mount Pleasant City Code to adopt the 2021 edition of the International Fire Code as amended and approval of payrolls and warrants.
Okay, thank you, Manager DeSense. Does anyone in the commission, any members of the commission have questions on any of the consent items? Is there any items that were desired to be moved out of the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda at this time?
I move we accept the consent agenda as read.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Alsager, seconded by Vice Mayor Ake to approve the consent agenda as read. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. All right, there are no public hearings this evening. Brings us back into new business. Number 18, consider approval of resolution establishing income and asset levels for poverty exemptions to 2026 property tax assessments. Manager DeSense, if you just wanted to give us a brief overview as we head back into this conversation.
Yeah, let me just I'll clear some history too. So at our February 9th meeting, the City Commission had taken action to approve a resolution which established the poverty-like guidelines which must be met for a property owner in order to claim a poverty exemption for property tax assessment. Follow-up conversation at our last meeting on the 23rd, City Commission revealed some further interest in potentially amending those guidelines. Guidelines for poverty exemptions are provided by the federal government. A local municipality can adopt guidelines that are higher than the provided threshold, but not lower. In your packet, you will find several materials related to this action. This includes Bullet 17 of 2025. It provides clarification on property tax exemptions as provided by the Michigan State Tax Commission. I've also included as much information on income levels in the city of Mount Pleasant that I could find using our placer .ai software. They derive that data from the U.S. Census. We also have City Attorney Mike Homier, who has provided a memo outlining the authority that the commission has related to this decision. I believe the mayor had also provided information on this as well. In your packet, you will find a resolution that allows the city commission to establish guidelines as it sees fit. You'll find a copy of the resolution that was adopted as well at the meeting on the 9th of February, which is the current poverty guidelines that we had adopted.
Okay. If I may, I had submitted some items for to the agenda packet for members of the commission to review as part of the conversation with this. The three, at our last meeting, the two primary tangible limits that I had heard reference to were a potential 10% increase. I had that number in my notes, and then references to potentially raising our guidelines to meet free or reduced school lunch menu free or reduced school lunches for public school students. Doing some research on those, I found that free meals, families are eligible at 130% of the federal poverty guidelines, and then reduced meals were 185% of the federal poverty guidelines. So I had calculated those out for members to be able to reference to if there was interest in that. And then along with that, I had included a potential update to the resolution that if we were going to use new numbers, I felt it was good to include both the federal poverty guidelines and then the demonstration of the percentage above that we were going to utilize. So those numbers should be available to the members of the commission within the packet.
If you're still looking, I'm looking at page 84. Page 84.
Thank you, Commissioner Alsager. Commissioner Perschbacher.
I do believe that all students in the state of Michigan that attend public school are able to receive both breakfast and lunch free.
That's correct.
There's no level of income on that, so I'm not sure why that would.
Yeah,
Come
it
into
used to
play.
be income-based.
It
Gotcha.
used to be, yeah.
So what I was pulling from, let's see, as I was researching it, I was looking at, let's see, the Michigan Department of Education's free and reduced price meals program information. So that's what I was seeing on MD, Michigan Department of Education's website. Let's see. So, I mean, yeah, Commissioner Demarov.
Having students in the school. Yes, currently they are free. There's always kind of like in the fall, there was the budget scare at the state level, which said, are we going to be able to fund this? Are we not going to be able to fund this? So these guidelines exist because in the future, who knows what will happen, right? That depends on the state budget. So, and I'll say this too, I like this as a guideline and using it for our property tax evaluation. So, or I'm sorry, wow, that was completely wrong. In our exemption. So I do like those numbers and using the free meal based, how it would be if people needed to qualify for free lunches. I know that they're all free, but I do like those numbers as using them as the exemption. So.
Gotcha. I thought it was incredibly convenient as I was researching it that they are directly tied to the federal poverty guidelines. So they're not numbers that the state generates or anything off. They're numbers that are tied the state as it sounds like, again, Michigan provides free school lunches, opportunities for students. But yeah, based off of the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Service, Child Nutrition Programs, those numbers are calculated out using the federal poverty guidelines, which again, for our purposes today, was an incredibly convenient metric. Commissioner Sklitsky.
Yeah, after reviewing the information that's provided in the packet and looking over the Bowen housing study that was done a couple years ago, there was a lot of interesting information regarding the demographic of our residents in Mount Pleasant. Yes, the majority of them that reach the poverty level do appear to be renting, but there are also a considerable amount of property owners within the city limits that do meet poverty limits that are homeowners as well. Logically, when I look at these types of situations, I don't think that these people are owning $250,000 homes or anything. You know, we're collecting large sums of taxes from. So I feel raising these rates to those free lunch levels, the 130% of poverty guidelines, would be a huge benefit to a lot of the residents here in Mount Pleasant. I mean, looking at the numbers, even that increase for a family of three, it's under $35,000. So if you can make your house payment, you can do all these things, still get by with $35,000. I think we'll do all right without that family's $600 in property taxes. And I'm sure that they could use that towards another house payment, doing some repairs, fixing a car, paying down some bills. I feel like it would be a huge service to our residents.
Am I right? You're looking at option 2?
Yes,
Yes.
the 130% of poverty levels.
Okay.
Mhm.
Other members of the commission?
I
Commissioner
think
Hapsager.
Commissioner Skaliski raises a good point, and I can agree with his assessment.
Okay. No additional there's not additional discussion on this. Is there interest in a motion to be made on this? Let's see.
I would like to make a motion that we adjust our poverty levels for property tax exemptions to meet federal guidelines for, state guidelines for free lunches, which would be 130% of poverty levels.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Skalitsky to set the poverty, grab my notes. Let's see.
The poverty guideline for
Yep, thank you. Yeah.
tax exemption.
Motion was made by Commissioner Skalinsky to set the poverty guidelines for property tax exemptions for 2026 tax assessments to be at 130% of the federal poverty guidelines, and seconded by Vice Mayor Eke. Okay. Is there any additional discussion on this topic?
I want to say something.
Vice Mayor? Manager Sensei, yeah.
Okay, Manager DeSense, you go.
Thank you. Just to make sure that the city commission is clear, then it looks like in the mayor's memo that was provided, that would coincide with the level set under option 2, which he had listed out in page 2 of that memorandum. So I just want to make sure that we're all looking at the same numbers. So then when we turn in the resolution, we have the set number. So I just want to make sure that it's option 2 in that mayor's memo.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes, it's the USDA guidelines for free meals. You said federal guidelines, USDA. Okay, so I think this is important, considering that our city sits in a county that has supposedly been identified as either the poorest or one of the poorest counties in the state of Michigan. And so, if we're talking about a healthy community, and also preserving the dignity of the people who live in this in this city, I do think that this is an important step to take. We want to bring everybody forward along with us. That's why I'm supporting it.
Any other discussion before we vote? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion approving the 130% level for guidelines, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Okay, that brings us to the end of new business, and we'll move into announcements on city-related issues and new business. Commissioner Alsager.
I'll pass tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Demaroff.
Nothing tonight.
Vice Mayor Eke.
Okay. I just, I do think that the city, Director Lauria, please remind me. I do think that the city has a law about people cleaning up their dog piles, right? Okay, so, whatever we want to call this weather, whether it's spring or mid whatever winter, the snow has thawed out, and I'm walking around the city and people are not doing what they need to do regarding their dogs' waste. I do think that it is responsible, the responsible thing to do, to keep our city clean. If other people are doing it, if your dog leaves something there, a gift for you, you need to pick it up. Okay. So I am troubled by that. I truly am troubled by that because it's, all over the place. So please just remember that it is you own a pet, you want a pet. So it is your responsibility to take care of that, whatever the pet does. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perschbacher.
I would just like to remind everyone that though it was a beautiful day today, it is still only the 9th day of March, and I expect winter to return probably in the next couple of days. Do not put away your snow shovel, because if you do, that's exactly when we'll get 10 inches of snow. But be sure to clean up when you're walking downtown, when you're walking anywhere, if there's trash, there's receptacles everywhere. And as Commissioner Selitsky said last time, if you have a drain in front of your curb, please remove the leaves. It helps keep from places flooding during any of our snowfall or possibly rain. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rollins.
Nothing this evening.
Okay. Commissioner Sklitsky.
We might be entering March Madness, but it doesn't take any extra energy to be kind.
Thank you. Okay. Two things this evening for myself. First, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that Hudson Keenan had passed on February 26th at the age of 93. He was a lifelong resident of the city of Mount Pleasant. He was a former mayor of the city, and he was also a local historian and conservationist. And I know he had a lot of impacts in the local community with a wide variety of civic organizations. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge his passing. The other item I had, just again, it sounds like weather's on all of our minds. We all really wish this would stay. Everyone's feeling a lot of energy right now. So if you're driving, you're probably driving a bit faster, but also keep in mind that there's a lot of people out walking right now. So just keep eyes open for pedestrians. And then also make sure that, like, as you're pulling up to a pedestrian crossing, you're not pulling onto the pedestrian crossing, you're hanging back so people have a place to safely cross and have priority there. That was it for myself. So that will bring us into public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak on any item on or off the agenda at this time, please step up to the microphone and feel free to form a queue. You'll be given 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. If you're using Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to indicate you would like to speak.
You can step right up.
I should probably start with the fact that I've never done this, so bear with me. So state my name, Brandy Andrews, and I am a parent of 2 children at the Mid-Mitten Montessori on the corner of Arnold and Maple. And I know that our board president was here 2 weeks ago, to express concern regarding children's safety at that corner and regarding the parking situation. I met with the director, Ms. Carrie Graham, this morning, and because she was unable to attend, her daughter was sick. But we're very solution-driven at the Montessori, and we appreciate all of the support that we've gotten from the community regarding the parking situation. My car was hit during pickup when I was picking up my children. My car was backed into. Maple is a very narrow road, and there's parking on both sides of the street. The the MP Fit Club, rather, is in the building. I'm trying to think of my directions, to the east of the Montessori. They take up our private parking, and I will say intentionally so, because I've spoken to participants from the gym, and when they're made aware that that's a pickup drop-off zone, they happily move their cars. And I was actually told by a member of the gym that they're encouraged to park at our front entrance because they know it's a source of contention, and it's almost comical to them. It's not comical to me. My car was hit. The woman took off. The woman then came back to park in the same spot, but she was so close to my car, she had to bail out her passenger door because she couldn't open her driver's door. So I stepped out of my car and I said, "Excuse me, this is a drop-off pickup zone, and I understand it is a public roadway." However, she was parked across the entire sidewalk. So our solution to that would be to include cement bumpers at the front of each of those angled parking spots, because there is not even so much as a sidewalk curb to prevent a rolling car into our building. So if we had cement bumpers, Ms. Carey and I priced out cement bumpers at $127 per parking space. And there are 7 parking spaces, 7 regular rather, and 2 handicap parking spaces. And at $127 per space, that would be $1,143. And I think our children's safety is well worth that. I think our children's safety is well worth that. And I implore you to consider our child's safety at the top of your priority. And may I reference a letter from the city of Mount Pleasant regarding this from July 21st, 2023. And this was simply in regards to snow plowing, not overall. But I will quote, "The first condition given by the city is that these spaces are at the end of our priority list. And if this is the only space for us to drop off and pick up our children, I don't think it should be at the last of our priority list. I think it should be closer to the top." And I don't say that in regards to snow plowing. I say that in regards to everything. Our children should be at the top of our priority, including their safety. And I know that there are parents in this room, along with myself, that I think we can all agree that children's safety is at the top. And I just would encourage the city of Mount Pleasant to please take a look at that corner, and the fact that it's a yield sign, it's not even a stop sign. There's a preschool on that corner. And I talked to Barb, who lives to the south of the Montessori. She is a neighbor. They block her driveway on a regular basis, members of the gym, because she's asked them, "Why are you parking here?" "We're just going to the gym." That's wonderful. If you back up a couple of feet, you wouldn't block my driveway. And I know our president, Anjani, was here 2 weeks ago requesting that the 6:30 timeframe, or the 5:30 timeframe rather, be extended to 6:30. And Ms. Carey and I agree that that would alleviate some stress during the pickup time. But overall, it's a dangerous intersection. The parking on both sides of the road, it just makes it so incredibly narrow. And Barb watches out her kitchen window and she said, "I just hope I don't see what I think I'm gonna see one day." And that's whether it be a child or an adult getting run over or backed into, or in my case, I'm glad my kids weren't with me because I was in the car when I got hit. And I was also walking out of the school when that individual confronted myself and my children regarding the situation. I think that's wrong. I think that's very wrong. And I think, again, I will reiterate, children's safety should be at the utmost of our minds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm here to discuss the merchant meetings. I've been attending the merchant meetings since last.
Your name and address?
Oh, sorry, Seth Triesenberg, 1021 Glen Ave. Sorry, I gotta start over because it's a whole thing, so. Hello. I want to discuss the merchant meetings. These meetings I've been attending these since last fall. I started attending them right after the fire of the Stitches Odyssey store that my wife and I own. And it was a way to get more connected to the community, which we really hadn't done until that point, and it's a great way to meet the other merchants downtown. So after months of going to these meetings, I saw a noticeable uptick of time in the meetings being taken by the MMDC group, who currently is the one that has these meetings. And I know in the past they've run by the city, but currently they're run by MMDC. It really started to feel like it was the MMDC or Mid-Michigan Development Corporation meeting rather than the merchants meetings. There's a good chunk of these meetings that is taken by that group. They go through the whole list of their staff comes up and talks about something, which is all important information, but really these meetings are an hour. They're very tight. The merchants try to meet each other and then also discuss things with the city, the people from the city who are there, and to connect about things with what we want to do for the downtown community. In the last meeting, they brought forward a whole system of paying them to support us, which I think they don't understand how this all works. But to support the community, the merchants is to go to the merchants, not give another company money to then give the merchants. I don't know how that all works. So I want to announce that me and a few merchants have decided to take these meetings back and come up with our own meeting. We are going to have we're going to have them at Outreach. Amy has allowed us to use her facility to have these meetings. We're going to call them the Merchant Guild meetings. They're going to be run by the merchants, not with the bias of other groups who are trying to make their opinions known, but for us to actually focus on the merchants. We are going to extend invites to the city, the chamber, CVD, and MMDC, and the downtown merchants and any other groups that want to come to them that have an impact. But we don't feel this is a long-term solution. We think this is where we really need the council and the city's support. The city is currently missing a downtown director, and we would like a downtown director to help run, facilitate, and really connect us with the community, with the city, and really make sure that what we need done so we can succeed is being done. I really think with the expansion of the farmers market that's coming and things like that, the lack of this role connecting these types of things is really going to be a problem. Sorry, I've lost my spot here. I will find it. I also wanted to say that I think we all know who would be a great fit for that role, because in the earlier part of this meeting, we acknowledged the letters of support for one individual. I don't need to say who it is because we all know who it is if we've been reading those letters. I really think this is a point where this city, I came here to impact this city, make this city what I think it can be. And I think it has the chance right now to grow and build, but I think there's some things that are needed to really make it what it can be. We have an opportunity, and I would really like the city to take the time to reinstate that. I know it's 5 minutes is not enough time to get into this in detail. So if anyone on the council would like to talk more about it, I have ideas. I would love to share more thoughts. So if you would like to reach out to me, feel free to do that. I can make myself known. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have a question. When are your meetings?
Oh, I missed the big part. March 18 at 8 a.m. is going to be our first one, and then we're going to go from there. Yeah, that will be at Outreach. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marta Notstein, 1361 South Crawford.
And I'm so happy it was light when we started this meeting tonight. That just makes me so excited. Anyway, municipalities all over Michigan are in need of housing. Last Wednesday, March 4th, I attended the Michigan Municipal League event in Midland, a Region G housing partnership, where municipalities spoke about ideas for building more median cost homes. They had financing and zoning, land developers were involved, and they spoke. Our Mount Pleasant planner spoke proactively about additional housing also. I needed to be educated, so I went. The area here in central Michigan needs 12 times as many homes built as are being built now. Zoning wants to include smaller houses on smaller lot sizes. Our city is landlocked. We can't use any land beyond our city limits. The southwest corner at Broomfield and Crawford is already designated for residential. That means more possible homes. North of Broomfield is the Country Way area where apartments are next to duplexes and then they flow into single-family homes. It was a planned development. On the southwest corner, empty field, wouldn't it be great to use the new zoning ideas to build a planned neighborhood and not have to squeeze houses in wherever we can? Commissioners, I hope you think of your job as to protect for the future of our city, which includes its tax base. We need more residential properties to give their support through their taxes. To give away taxable land forever is not thinking long-term. I look at the expenses in just this month's agenda. There's trucks, mowers, road salt, sidewalks, sewer relining, water wells. These costs keep coming and the budget certainly won't get smaller. It's still my contention that our city future needs the land more than anyone else because the city cannot just go buy 50 acres to build more houses. A private school could build in so many areas outside the city, but near. They have backing and money to be able to build in a field close to Mount Pleasant. I'm sorry that I feel the school supporters don't understand that they are hurting the city. 2/3 of the signers don't even live in the city. You can't ignore the fact that this private school doesn't need to build inside the city limits. It may be the best school in the state, but it doesn't need to be built on that exact property. Driving back from the Wednesday meetings, I took some pictures along the side of the road between Loomis Road and the casino. 4 big plots of land, all with for sale signs. There's even there's a sewer down there. This one has woods. All of these have lots of trees, while this piece of property at the southwest corner has nothing. 30 acres, not 20, even if you could get 20 houses per acre, that's just an average, is 60 houses, all paying taxes, and the private school would pay nothing. The southwest corner has been 90 or more acres for many, many years left for development. One of the last large pieces of empty land left for our future city tax base. Was that my end? No. Okay. The owner decided to give over 50 acres to CMU. That is his prerogative. But it is no longer useful for the city tax base. Now the city staff wants to give another 30 acres to a nonprofit which uses city infrastructure, but does not help maintain it with more than their monthly use bill. Zoning 90 acres for a non-transferable use just forces young people looking for a home to go out into the township and buy. So please don't let private entities steal our city's future, its tax base, and its homes for the families of the future. We do not have any additional land. And I thought about looking into a QR code since they did. And it's easy to do, but I don't think it's kosher to put a private business use on the government website to collect support. I just don't feel that's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pictures if anybody wants to look at.
You had 3 seconds to spare, Marcia. Yeah.
Land, land.
Big plots of land. Thank you.
Are there any raised hands on Zoom? Gotcha. If you want to speak. So we'll do the raised hand on Zoom if you want to just kind of hang out for the queue and everything. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ashley Petrash. I live at 114 North Lansing Street. I just want to say thank you for paying attention to the property tax exemption. And yes, I think you voted correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Yep, if there's anyone else in the audience, feel free to make a queue.
Good evening. My name is Rick McGurk, United Apartments, 4175 East Bluegrass Road in Mount Pleasant. I'm here to get some more information on the next agenda item on your work session with the formation of the Tenants' Right Committee. In the past, in some years, and some people may remember this, when there was I would imagine, I think it was a quarterly meeting when students and representation from CMU, the landlords in Mount Pleasant, city manager, and others from, I believe you were part of that committee, and that meeting frequency. And I was just wondering, with maybe looking at that setup, if that would be something desirable for all the stakeholders that would be involved in that process. I just have concern for the impact on all involved with such a heavy efforts to start up and maintain a new tenants' right committee. It worked, that lack of communication and that lack of meeting may be something that could accomplish what is being proposed on that work session. And I had a note here that, it would be good to promote maybe that structure that we've already had in place and the time needed to set up a new committee with, accounting, staffing, data migration, record keeping, there probably some fair housing training, will, be taxing on everybody involved. Whereas perhaps meeting on that quarterly basis may achieve some middle ground to help everybody involved. In the past, I should point out, our dealings with the fire department have been great in working through issues that have presented themselves over the course of my career in this business of 30 years. And we've been held accountable and worked together to find the resolutions that come about. And I feel that there's, been a good relationship throughout my career. And I'm sure through everyone's research on this that there are resources available, and perhaps they just need to be made more accessible for people, such as the practical guide for the landlords and tenants that's out there on the state of Michigan's site. I use it a lot and reference it quite frequently. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights, and then we've got our Michigan Community Dispute Resolution Program that's available. Excuse me. So I just kind of want to hit that refresh button mainly on perhaps we look at that, opening that work group back up and putting it back together and see how that feels as maybe an option before we get into something really large and intensive. Thank you.
Thank you. See, other members of the public at this time? Any emails? Any other raised hands? Okay. This time I'm going to go ahead and close public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. Time right now is 8:49. I'm gonna guess I'm about to hear a call for a 10-minute recess.
Yes.
Gotcha.
9:00.
Gotcha. We will resume at 9 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you. You need water. Feel hydrated. No, I'm not. Okay. There. That's it. So, big thing about
You'll get dust bunnies.
We got about 30 seconds left.
There we go. You did the Aaron style. You didn't do my style.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9 o'clock and we are back in session for our work session. This is a continued conversation on a work session on Tenants' Rights Committee. Manager DeSense, I think you have an intro there.
Yeah, absolutely. So at our last meeting on the 23rd of February, City Commission discussed the concept of a tenant rights committee. General feedback from the work session included the committee's role in being advisory board to the commission. The committee would provide information to the commission and community on various topics of interest to renters and the use of current programs to address tenant complaints and concerns. Public Safety Director Paul Lauria has provided a memo outlining recommendations for the structure and composition of the proposed tenant rights committee. The commission asked that staff provide recommendations on who the city commission might consider for such a committee, and that information is in the director's memo.
Thank you. Okay. Looking to see if there's a member of the commission who would want to start off conversation this evening.
It's Galiski's.
Yeah, go figure. It's the one that brought up the issue and started getting this ball rolling. I think during our last meeting, we talked about some of the complaints that are sent forward to code enforcement and how a lot of them are not actually enforceable. There are misunderstandings regarding the contract and tenants' rights as a whole, which I feel goes to show that there is a lot of education that is necessary for our tenants. I have spoke to some of the members of our housing commission, and we do have a lot of good landlords that are looking to make sure that people have a roof over their heads, that they're living in decent conditions, that rent is affordable for them. But there are also a lot of bad actors inside of city limits as well. And these are the types of people that we need to make sure that our tenants our residents they know their rights and they know how to enforce those rights. For example, right out of high school, I had an apartment over, it was actually in Union Township, but there was no certificate of occupancy on this building. Like, I did not know anything about how occupancy works or how leases work or anything along those lines. I had a door that opened right up to my neighbor's. He had no way of locking it. It was a completely illegal place to reside. There was no certificate of occupancy owned by the quote unquote landlord. And these are the types of situations where people can get taken advantage of if they do not know what their rights are. It sounds like there is a lot of groundwork already laid out for establishing the makeup for what this committee might look like. What Director Lauria proposed, it's great. There's a lot of representation from all the stakeholders involved. One concern I do have is that making sure a committee this large is filled would be challenging.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was a thought that I had on it. I think my initial thought that reading through it, I think they were all very well thought out stakeholders to include on this list as we're looking to delve into this topic and create a board that can create better advocacy and, again, a better experience for tenants within the city of Mount Pleasant. I think there's a lot of good representation here. I would probably, just talking numbers, I think like the planning commission, for example, is 9 members. I don't know if I'd really want to go beyond that as far as like numbers on a committee or anything. But just while that topic had been brought up, that was my thoughts there. Let's see. Commissioner Demeroth, before we started, I believe you had interests
Oh, yeah.
in public comment. Yeah.
Yeah, so the last public comment, there was mentioned a quarterly meeting that kind of took on some of these complaints or working with like landlord renter, I don't know, I don't exactly know what the meetings were. Right, but you'd said that they had stopped, and I wondered why this had ended, was my
They did.
question.
They didn't stop.
Oh, okay.
You have a commissioner assigned to that board.
Oh, okay.
So we have them. I'm assigned to it. The city manager's
Oh,
assigned to
okay.
it.
So it's ongoing, it's not.
That's
ending.
correct.
Okay, okay.
So
I
you'd
didn't,
be referring to the city CMU Student Liaison Committee then in that case?
That's what I'm assuming he's, that
Okay.
There's
that
the
it was
reference
being
there.
referred to,
Okay,
correct?
gotcha.
oh, okay. So, okay, sorry, I didn't realize that was being referenced. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Well, I think one thing about that committee, I also don't know if we get any reporting from it necessarily as as like the as the members of the commission. Like, I can't recall, like,
You had, members from two different neighborhoods on there that we can't fill.
mhm.
That had, for whatever reason, had resigned. So we don't have representation, necessarily, from that aspect of it. But as far as recommendation and things, we talk, about things that they'd like to see or the problems that they're having or whatnot. So.
Okay. That's, yeah, that's good to know. Again, like, I have not personally served on that committee. But I know that it is something that, again, like, it is a good organization that we have representation on as members of the commission. And it, again, brings together a number of different stakeholders. My comment was just that as a member of the commission for the past 4 years, I can't recall seeing like just documentation or feedback from it to the commission itself. Not that it's not doing work or not doing good work, just that as a member of this commission, I can't recall having seen any kind of like reporting back from it necessarily. That minutes or anything of that nature, largely of what a discussion might look like.
Boomer.
Commissioner Alsager.
I've been on that committee in the past, and then I hadn't been on it for a couple years. But I remember Paul being there. I remember Aaron taking charge of the meetings. I remember being there with another commissioner. But most of the comments they weren't involving landlords with big operations. It was just two residents who happened to live in the air, around CMU.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the same as what we have on paper here is meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll add something if I may.
Mhm.
During last week's packet, there was a lot of information that was provided regarding some of the efforts that cities like Kalamazoo have made towards their housing. Now, I had mentioned that there's a lot of progressive efforts that they were making, particularly with their Tenants' Bill of Rights. So I feel like it's important for us to take our own look at the housing needs that we have in Mount Pleasant. We've had meeting after meeting about the needs for additional housing. We just heard how we need 1,200 more homes being built right now in Isabella County than what we currently have. There is a very large demand and contention on the little bit of property that we have. So finding ways that we can make the most of it, that we can coordinate with our residents who are going to be forced to rent as populations grow and we can't build more places. The only thing we can do is build up, not out. With that, it would include a lot more apartments and a lot more need for evolving housing needs, and having a committee based with their intention strictly on making sure that we're monitoring those needs, that we're addressing those needs as they come up, that we're getting regular reports like average rents. You know, that would be very valuable information for a resident to be able to compare. You know, this 2-bedroom, 1-bath goes for this much in this facility. It goes for this much in this facility. It creates a more level playing field for tenants, and I feel like it's definitely something that needs to be done considering the makeup of our housing in town.
How are they prohibited from shopping for rents now, Commissioner? What isn't there out there that they don't know what United charges or another local landlord charges? What stops that?
Time. If the committee was available, if the committee had this information already readily available and on the city website, they would be able to just make a couple links and
There is considerable information available on CMU's website. And if we're talking about information, we need a committee to put together the information? Or do we put a link to stuff? I mean, to me, there has to be some self-initiative here. Where if you're in the rental market, you know where to go for the information, but you got to do it. Nobody's going to serve it up to you. And so I'm all for providing whatever, any information this panel wants to provide. But to form a committee to provide information, we have problems filling our committees now. And I don't know who you're going to get to serve on it. But if that's what we want to do, then charge the committee with putting together the information and reevaluate it from there.
Vice Mayor Ake.
I have a question for Director Loria. You talked about this committee that exists because I want to see what the distinction is between.
You're talking the CMU Liaison Committee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, when it addresses,
Town and gown issues.
sorry.
Town and gown issues, basically.
Okay, how often do you have complaints or issues that are related to tenants, rental? None? Zilch?
Now, mind
Okay,
you,
okay.
when you talk rent, that's a contractual thing. So we can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or if somebody wants to get out of a lease or something like that, that's a contractual thing. Again, that we would, we may ask some probing questions, why do you want to get out of your lease? Okay, it's filthy, the plumbing doesn't work. Then they're going to go and investigate that and look to make sure that it can, be suitable for housing. But we can't provide legal advice. We don't provide legal advice. We don't get in the middle of any sort of missed payments or none of that. None of that. So there's that contractual relationship that we have to walk a very fine line of interfering with and not interfering with.
So I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying to me, and you're saying right now, this particular committee on which you serve addresses the issue that you're talking about right now?
It will address the town and gown issues. For instance, you guys talk about being good neighbors. And good neighbors, if you live next to a college student, sometimes, they like to have some social events or gatherings or whatever. And in that, we give them tips, just like we do at the start of the fall semester. Get to know your neighbor. be polite to them, help them, help each other, keep communication. If you're gonna have a party, that's the types of things that are discussed there.
Okay,
If it is a matter of, and again, I'm making this up, bad plumbing, I don't think we've ever discussed that at that meeting,
okay.
you know?
So I'm gonna ask, just for clarity, so this committee does not address a situation where a landlord is engaged in egregious activity against a tenant. Will it address it or not?
It would listen to the complaint. It would listen to the issue. When you talk about addressing, I want to make sure we're clear here. Does that committee go back and address the issue? No, but there's people around that table, like myself, Fire Chief Lab Singer, and others, that when they hear that the plumbing doesn't work, hey, we'll look into it, or we'll, there's an opportunity for that discussion to take place. Does that make sense? Am I
Okay.
explaining it right or no?
Oh, well, that's part of it. So plumbing doesn't work. There's a pool of water right in front of the door, mildew, mold in the building. The tenant is complaining. Okay, Director Lobsinger said last time, 98% of the landlords are great. And I'm not disputing that. It's the 2% that I worry about. And I have investigated a lot of cases where I'm talking to the landlords, I'm talking to the apartment complexes, and I'm saying, I'm going to call, you know who, right? Referred cases to civil rights lawyers because I can't deal with that anymore. Does this committee look at cases like that?
No.
Okay, now so now you've given me justification for why this particular committee that we're thinking about, should be there. Okay, because then it will be doing something entirely different from what you're talking about. It may not necessarily, and your committee does not make recommendations to the city commission. Has it?
Well, again, that's why we have a liaison of a city commissioner on there. And I would assume that if they felt the need to bring up an issue or something to address, that they would do that as being a liaison on the
Okay.
committee, correct?
Okay,
Not
so,
certain what's going on.
yeah,
It follows us around.
yeah, so it seems to me, what I'm hearing is that we've got an existing committee that functions differently.
Sure.
Okay, it's not looking into questions of legalities and rights. And, what are the rights of the tenants? What are, if a tenant says, my whatever it is, civil rights, my right to decent housing is being, violated, where do I go? How do I deal with this? This committee will listen to it, does not make recommendations. What I'm hearing about this particular committee that, we're trying to address, or at least envision right now, is that hopefully it will listen, it will hear those particular cases, it would, make recommendations to the city commission in terms of what policies we might look at in the future or what the next steps would be. That's what I'm hearing. Unless I'm hearing this incorrectly, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay. And part of that would be, because to at least make some tenants aware of what their rights might be or may not be, where is the document? And the reason why I'm saying this is because, again, I serve on the Isabella County Human Rights Committee. Much of my experiences dealing with these housing issues much of that experience comes from investigating housing problems countywide. Okay. I get to the point where There is no resolution. I can't provide that resolution. So what I end up doing is recommending. Okay. But one of the things that I have also found out in doing this is that a number of the people that I have, cases that I have looked at, those people didn't know what their rights were. All they knew was, as you said, they had a contract with the landlord. They don't know what the other elements or what the other pieces of those rights are. And I'm hoping that maybe this committee, working with, whoever is, with the landlords, hopefully. I don't see that this committee is going to exist without at least a landlord in it, okay? Working with the landlords would then say, here is this document or whatever it is, however we're going to approach this. I want us to envision this committee as a committee that attempts to resolve problems, not one that is antagonistic towards landlords. And I want to emphasize that. Okay? Did I say something wrong?
No, but what I heard, again is providing information.
That's one aspect of it. Yes, it will provide, but it also makes recommendation to the commission. I hope that it's not just simply getting information to the tenants. It is a recommending body, a body that looks at all these issues and says, these are the things. It has to be objective.
Okay.
This is what we're looking at. Here are the problems. Here are some of the recommendations we're making to address these or to move forward. That's what I'm thinking of. But maybe I'm thinking differently, I always think differently. But anyway,
Commissioner Sklitsky?
Yes, primarily I would love to see this committee as something that suggests ways that we can address housing issues in town. Primarily in addressing housing laws. There's not been much progressive movement made in Michigan as a whole for a very long time. One of the ways that we can reduce homelessness is by making sure that people stay inside their houses. Another way that we can do is removing the barriers that people have from getting apartments in the future. Currently, as far as I know, there is no exemption or no statute of limitations on evictions, which is a very large reason why people are ineligible for getting apartments in the future. I can't say exactly what would be fair for a statute of limitations on evictions. What would be fair for a landlord? Is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? A committee is something that would be able to investigate what the needs are for town and address that and bring that forward to the commission. Same with a lot of other things that we might be able to possibly address, like right to renew, right to repair.
Yeah.
Things that are not laws in Mount Pleasant or in Michigan.
Let's see.
There's a
Commissioner
lot of hurdles you have to go through in order to take it to court, in order to get paid back. There are certain communities that have taken measures to remove some of those hurdles and make it easier for residents to get the repairs done and get credited back on the rent.
Love Singer, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
State of Michigan passed 3 laws this April. Governor signed them.
Wow.
And they had to do with right to repair. And if they didn't get it repaired, they could hire their own contractor or repair it themselves. And so to say that there's not any new, that's not quite true. And I also believe, with my experience that I've seen, is state of Michigan is a very tenant rights state to begin with. And when we bring information back to you, what are you going to do with it?
That was my question. I mean, who's going to be the enforcement body? I mean,
You're going to decide to step in between a landlord and a tenant and get in their business? I mean, from a personal standpoint,
If I own the property, I should be able to decide who I want to rent that to. Now, I would hope I'm a nice person and I don't be unfair to somebody, but that's my property. I built that. I paid for that. I fix it. I come in here every 2 months and have to put brand new carpet in it, or I could, you know, and it goes on and on. And to say that I don't have the right to pick my tenant, I don't think that's fair.
I don't, to be clear, I don't think anyone's.
Well, I don't want to renew, because my history in the last lease with you hasn't been positive. And I've had a lot of damage to my property and, you know, but I can't make that decision on my own. I have to bring that before a city, or I don't think that's right.
Yeah, so kind of a couple things I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of conversation on a variety of items on this. One, I wanted to talk about CMU versus non-CMU. We have a lot of working relationships with CMU, and I think that's really amazing. They're a critical partner to our community success. So again, we've worked on building a number of bridges there over the years. So I think that's been really important, really vital. I want to say 2010 was the height of enrollment. Does that sound right to anyone in the audience? Around 2010, 30 or so, maybe 20, 25, 30,000, everything students there. Those numbers have dropped, and I'm sure many of the landlords in the audience can understand that their tenants have moved from being primarily CMU students to a lot of times being non-CMU students, to being local area residents who are unaffiliated with the university, relying on representation from the university solely when we're talking about tenants' rights isn't gonna cut it anymore, because again, there is a large swath of the rental population that just aren't involved with the university at this point. So that's just one feature there. And then the other two pieces that I just wanted to comment on, there's been a couple of times this evenings where people have talked about ease of creating a body. And like, again, the difficulty of finding people to fill out the roles within this. I don't expect creating a new committee to be easy. I just don't. I don't expect any of it to be easy. I don't expect we're going to have this, if we are successful in creating this, to have something ironed out by April for approval or anything. I don't expect that, just because, again, we're working still on keeping staff on board with and articulating the vision and desire for this. But I don't think that means it's not worthwhile to pursue. I don't think, because the difficulty of it makes it any less worthwhile. I think back to, God, it had been at least 2018 or 2019, or maybe a little earlier than that, when there was proposal from the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group to create a citizens advisory board to public safety. That there was a long period of discussion on that, and ultimately ended up going back to discussions when not resulting in a committee, even though there was a lot of support for that idea at the time. The process of creating an actual city body isn't an easy thing, but that does not mean it's not worthwhile. As to the idea, again, we talk about documents or education, links. These things are out there. These things are live. They're up to date and everything. I think it's important to have a body and create a body behind this, specifically because it's a living element then, ideally. That is the concept here. We create a PDF. Does that PDF get updated when 3 new laws have been passed last April? Are new measures put in place? If the city commission does take action to try and support renters, is there information coming back to us on how effective it was? again, this is a new concept. Our city charter is literally focused on health, the public health and safety of persons of property within the city. No mentions of people or residents within the city. So expanding that idea, expanding it to include literal language, to include tenants, creating a body to see the rights, to, again, observe the experience of tenants within the community, that I do think is worthwhile. Those are the primary things that I just wanted to comment on there. Just, again, a lot of back and forth as we've been having this conversation. Other members of the commission, Commissioner Demaroth.
I like where you're going, and I also think that looking at this committee as something that's going to resolve direct issues between tenants and landlords is not necessarily the right way to go. I think looking at it as a group of people who can discuss how we can act, and if that means ordinances and policy, and how we can protect the rights of tenants, I think that is how it should be utilized rather than a buffer between disputes. And not to say that people shouldn't come with their concerns. Absolutely, you should be able to voice those, because in voicing those, you can look at ordinances and policies. But I don't see this as some kind of body to resolve that.
The people's court.
Right. I don't think that should be the place of the committee either.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was something that we've gone is kind of plagued the discussion, I think, a bit. And I just putting this back to the rest of the commission, kind of seeing nods, or like if anyone wants to speak up on it. I don't think any of us are interested in creating a body where someone can bring forward a specific complaint and then see litigation by this body between the member. Like, again, as staff has pointed out, that's a contractual issue. There are judges who are specifically in, again, courts that are specifically trained to arbitrate issues and ultimately decide those. I don't think anyone, I'm, again, correct me if I'm wrong through just nods or anything, but I don't think any of us are interested in seeing a body that is out here litigating specific complaints, specific issues, but more so looking to address, like, possibly trends and policy. If efforts are successful, or recommending, again, making recommendations. Question I have for staff, again, we evidently get a good portion of complaints that we receive are contractual, and we can't get involved in that. Do we have, like, do we keep record? Like, what happens to those complaints? I guess, again, they're not our business, but we do then have this information, I guess.
You mean where, do we have record of when someone calls and they want out of their lease? And we say, well, what's going on? Well, I no longer want, whatever the reason is, and it's not a maintenance issue, or anything like that. No, we don't keep record of that.
Gotcha.
We would not, but if we go over there and do an inspection or do an investigation into a problem, sure, there's record of that.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that is helpful to know that there is a record of such investigations, because then, what this, what I'm hoping that the committee, this body will do is to be an advisory body. I'm not looking at it as, I'm not interested in taking on additional responsibilities such as, trying a case and then determining who is guilty or not guilty. I'm not interested in that. But I do think that it is important for us to know what's going on in the city, if there are housing problems, how do we address, these issues if tenants are complaining, and if the tenants are complaining about the same people again repeatedly, right? If it's just a complaint about one person, okay, once. But if it is repeated again and again and again, it's the same, landlord or management, or, however you want to define it, we ought to pay attention to something like that, to then ask questions, regarding how we make things better. What kinds of policies do we then create or establish, or how do we look at our ordinances, to make sure that people are not engaged in, hurtful, acts? And if the tenants need information, is that available on our website? To say, hey, go to this place. This is where you get the information. And, how updated is the website?
Commissioner Rollins.
Don't we have a code enforcement building inspector for that purpose? I mean, I understand where Commissioner Eke is coming from, but rather than reinvent the wheel, could we somehow form a document or such stating the steps that a tenant would take? Or, kind of like, I don't know, I think we already have that too. I just think that I see all the sides, but I think it's more of we need to streamline or consolidate all the resources that are currently out there into one simple singular document
Makes sense.
of some sort rather than form a committee.
Can you say it 3 times fast?
Well, basically, we take all the resources and consolidate it into one simple cohesive document. Rather than form a committee. I mean, I see all the sides and I see why we may need it, but rather than just add another layer, we just see what's out there and see where we can condense it down all into one thing.
There are resources out there. There was one that was just shown to us here just a little bit ago. But there are certain municipalities that have gone further and made that part of their leasing agreement. The landlord has to provide that at the signing with every lease, the exchange of every lease if it's a sublease. These are little steps that we.
And I can tell you, there's a lot of landlords that are providing that already. You talk a lot about the housing commission. They provide that.
Yes, they do.
I can tell you United Apartments provides that. So that is.
Yeah.
So why are we then?
Does Millennia Housing provide that?
I don't know them all off.
I mean, and that's also, I think, part of the discussion also is I feel like, again, like, because, I'll take the blame and everything on it about, my comment last week, initial hesitancy about like including like tenant or landlords on it. And not last week,
2 weeks ago.
our last work session, we were having an exchange and, I showed hesitancy about including landlords on a tenants' rights committee. I cop to that and everything. I think Demaroth encapsulated that well with discussions about like the power dynamic in there. I think you've provided a lot of resources that I think changed my mind on that, about like what could be accomplished. But I think what we need to also focus our like recontextualize here is that we're not just talking about, mom and pop shops who have like, they owned a house, moved to a new house and so they decided to rent out the old house that they have, or someone who owns 3 or 4 places. We're also talking about large housing complexes that don't pay the water bill for their residences. So we have to go and tag each and every door, notifying these residents that, hey, you may not have water in like here shortly. And like, again, like they're like, so as we contextualize this, again, it's not just these small, like small operation landlords or properties. It is larger operations as well. Sorry, you seemed like you're ready to, or want to jump on that.
I was just gonna say, I was fairly certain that we brought forth ordinances in regards to address that issue.
Sure did.
That specific issue of payment and what happens when you don't pay. And so when we hear about the problems and we don't have the mechanism in place, I think that, you know, and I'm not tooting our own horn, but I think that we're pretty good at addressing them. If you want to be more reactive, then, you know, form your board and provide them with the charge and see what advising or policies they come up with that are doable, that are lawful. I'll be really interested in that because I just do not see, I do not see any local ordinance getting in the middle of what a landlord can and can't do in the way of charging rent, or whatnot. So, you know, by all means, I'm all for that. I just, for me, I don't know what I would tell this board. Are we gonna wait until we hear a complaint? You know, so hold tight. Are we gonna wait until we hear a complaint? Once we hear a complaint, then we'll discuss it. But if you guys are looking for policy direction and things like that, I think that's a great charge that you can provide to whoever the chairperson is, and then they come back and report on what can be done.
Gotcha. Regarding the ordinance of Millennia Housing, last I heard that there had been payment, like a payment history that triggered that ordinance, the new ordinance that we had put in place. It would require deposits and whatnot. Had that been successful as far as enforcement gone?
Yeah, as far as obtaining the deposit and moving forward in that way, yeah.
Gotcha. We had received the funds to put in escrow at that point. Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, as far as like creating charges, I mean, like, yeah, it would be, we could create a commission, we could create a board, and put forward different policy questions to said board if that's something that we're interested in there. Again, that's the basic structure of like, again, what we do. It's what we do with the planning. Again, think about the planning commission, the state has our zoning enabling laws and gives us grounds to create the zoning board or the planning commission, and we and empower them to take on different topics. Other members of the commission right now, discussion.
I believe it would be very beneficial to help take some of the things off of our dais and allow them to focus on housing issues as they come up. I think that if we could be proactive in some issues that we face, that would be wonderful. As far as I know, Millennia has had their ability to bid on government housing revoked because of their poor practices. Just having a committee that is focused on all the housing needs that we have in Mount Pleasant. These are not new problems that we've had. We've had housing problems for the last several years, and to have a dedicated committee addressed on steering us in the right direction, I think would be very helpful.
Oh, answers sense.
I think we've discussed some interesting ideas here this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Skolitsky's brought forward and clearly as well researched on some different topics related to this sort of thing. Just as a matter of throwing an idea out there is also just why not start with those ideas and start trying to move that forward with this board? And that's just an idea because it's, again, we're talking about this, trying to say, hey, we need a committee that I kind of wrote down in my notes, ideation. This committee would come up with these ideas related to tenants' rights, and we would talk about these policies. They would bring a recommendation forward to the city commission, but I think we've already identified at least a direction to go even at this point. Why not start there and go forward from that point?
Just for comparison purposes, we did something very similar with marijuana when I think it was medical marijuana. Was it medical? I can't remember which.
It was medical.
But the city commission, was it medical?
At first.
No, the board that the city commission formed as their advisory board, where they picked members of the community, people applied to be on it. And then they picked members of the community, based on who applied. And then that board came up with a recommendation and then came back to the city commission and presented it. I could tell you who was on it, but trust me, that's what happened.
And that's why we started with 3, because they were being cautious.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess my point is it's been done before.
Okay. So talking about this, right now, there's been a lot of discussion, and I know both the manager and Director Loria have taken a number of notes and everything throughout the conversation. I've had a bunch of notes and everything as we've gone through this. Our second work session on this topic right now, and we have at least 4 other specific or work sessions already plotted out over the next couple of next couple of meetings, I think. One thing I would consider and everything, I believe is within my power is to appoint a study committee of the members of the commission. If there's interest, I'm thinking that to keep this conversation going and potentially come up with more concrete recommendations, I could appoint members of the commission to a study committee to sit down with staff and hash out more specific ideas that could then be brought back to the board or to the commission for considerations. I don't need volunteers at this moment, but thoughts on that to keep us on schedule rather than, so that way, again, like we could have 3 members of the commission sit down again with probably the manager and Director Loria and talk through some of the different issues of either specific points of contention that we could then vote upon or what we feel comfortable moving forward with. If there'd be interest from members of the commission, thoughts on that again, so we could bring that back at a later time, but have work done in the meantime.
I would be interested in being on that.
Okay.
Likewise.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay. Gotcha. Checking with the manager, just since I'll follow up with you on just making sure, like, again, I don't want to suddenly overstep my authority by appointing a study committee or anything. But just then checking with Director Loria and yourself that would be able to orchestrate such a meeting to just, again, be able to sit down, go through some items of like our discussion so we can come up with some more actionable items for review. I think there's a lot of interest, and I think speaking for myself, I think there are some good ideas out there. But again, narrowing them into and putting it into writing to create more of a masthead of what it is we're trying to accomplish. So that way we can build around that versus around the ideas, but more, again, the direction we're trying to head as far and what kind of mission we can set for this potential committee. Any final thoughts from staff on this at this time? No. Any final thoughts from members of the commission? Okay. Again, I appreciate the lively discussion again from members of the commission, members of staff, and then again, I know there are many members of the public in the audience who are interested in this conversation and how it takes place. We'll have more information. The formation of the study committee would be announced at the next meeting as part of the agenda. And so I would then direct your further comments to the members of the study committee once they're appointed. But in the meantime, it is 9:49. There's no further business before the commission, and we will stand adjourned.
Here, here.
Yeah. You died long enough.